Welcome back to the National Seafarers Academy Marine Radio Operator Permit class. Right now on the agenda where I have a couple of miscellaneous topics to cover. We've kind of touched on these topics throughout the lessons, but we're just going to highlight them during this quick brief lesson. So miscellaneous topics. Frequency bands. High frequency is considered from 3 to 30 megahertz. Very high frequency is 30 to 300 megahertz, and the ultra high frequency is 300 to 3000 megahertz. Simplex and duplex. Simplex is going to mean that we're going to use the same frequency for both transmit and receive. So one frequency, transmit and receive. Duplex is going to be we're going to use one frequency for transmission and a different frequency for reception. Kind of the channels, frequencies, and purposes. So channel 6 is 156.300 megahertz, and that's the primary intership or safety channel. Channel 13, bridge-to-bridge designated frequency. Channel 16 is 156.800 megahertz. That's the VHF International Hailing and Distress channel. 22 alpha, that's a working channel for the Coast Guard. 67 was an example of a vessel traffic service channel. Channel 70 is where the digital selective calling message, so those digital messages that go out via your radio on VHF go out on what is equivalent to channel 70. Again, with a single sideband or the medium frequency radio, the 2182 is the equivalent of channel 16 in the MF frequency band. Again, we use that for hailing and distress. VHF radio controls that we saw in the movie. Now, both the fixed and the handheld have a low power setting and a high power setting. For the low power setting, it's going to be 1 watt for both the fixed and the handheld. For the high power setting, a fixed radio will be a high power of 25 watts. And a handheld will be 5 watts. The dual watch function allows you to listen to a selected channel and also monitor channel 16. Again, we adjust the squelch so that it is at the minimum level it takes to break the background noise. So in other words, when the squelch is adjusted properly, there's no background noise, and you'll receive the most sensitive transmission if it's just on that borderline. Okay, there's another mode setting in your VHF radio, and it lets you toggle between USA settings, international settings, and Canadian settings. And the difference between international and US, it changes certain international duplex channels into simplex while operating in the US. What do we mean by that? Let's take a look. So you can see in the first bullet there, international, channel 22. That's a duplex channel because you can see there's two different frequencies, one for transmission and the second one for reception. And again, that's duplex, and that's designated for port operations. But in the USA mode, you would not get 22, you would get 22 alpha. Anytime you see an alpha channel, that's always a US or Canadian designation. And you can see it changes that 22 alpha channel to being a simplex, and it both transmit and receive on the 157.1 megahertz channel. And the same thing in this case for the Canadian. It just gives you 22 alpha. I had this question come up a lot. Folks say that they're using their VHF radio and they don't have 22 alpha. Well, that's because they're in the international mode. You need to set your radio to the USA mode if you're operating in US waters. So for the medium frequency and high frequency shore stations, when they're using their radio, they're actually, for voice communications, using the single sideband mode. If they're using it to send data, they're actually using the forward error correcting mode. Okay, so again, if we're using voice communications, we do the single sideband mode. For data, we do the forward error correcting mode. For distress, urgency, and safety within the single sideband radios, again, we talked about there was actually 6 assigned frequencies utilized for distress, urgency, and safety. There was a frequency in the 2 megahertz, the 4 megahertz, the 6 megahertz, the 8 megahertz, 10, and 12 bands. So for those non-GMDSS ships, to maximize the chance of other vessels to receive those, they should operate in one of the designated safety frequencies. Okay, let's talk about the power. All right, first let's talk about a VHF radio. A VHF radio, when I key the mic, it's going to put out the power as soon as I key the mic. So if I'm on high power on my fixed radio, I key the mic, I'm putting out 25 watts of power, whether I say anything or not. Single sideband does it differently. I key the microphone in a single sideband, it does not put out any power until I talk into the microphone. Once I talk into the microphone, my voice is modulated with the carrier wave, and then it gives an output. So when you're not speaking, the power out would be about 0. And then when I start speaking, it's going to give you that, that 60 watt power out peak to peak. So again, I key the mic on a single sideband, I talk into it, I see the needle fluctuating. Much like in a CB radio, if you remember how the CB radio, you used to watch the needle dance as you were talking into the microphone. Single sideband operates the same way. Okay, we saw the SITOR simplex teletype over radio. Again, that's kind of the old style text messages over a HF radio system. International air distress. The international air distress frequency is still the 121.5 megahertz for civilian aircraft. And actually the mode of that radio is going to be A3E, which stands for AM, single analog channel voice communications. Again, for a non-GMDSS cargo ship, we'd be maintaining a watch on channel 16 and channel 2182. Okay, the phonetic alphabet and numbers. Again, for the phonetic alphabet, we go all the way from alpha to Zulu. That's A through Z. And then the numbers are 0 through 9er. We use International Morse code. If you have any questions on the last topic, please give me a call or shoot me an email. Well, that concludes all the formal presentations. What you should do now is go ahead and take a look at the FCC Element 1 database of questions that's in your next section of your binder. Go through all of those questions. You have the questions and you have the answers also there. So please feel free to do all of those questions. Again, that's public domain information, and that's what's really going to be used for the crux of your exam. Your exam is going to consist of 24 questions, and as you notice, there's 24 topics within the FCC database, so it's kind of one question per topic. Give me a call if you have any questions.